I want to welcome everyone. Does anyone here need to get introduced to anyone else? Does everyone pretty well know each other? This is my wife Jessica, in case anybody wants to know. I know pretty much everyone in the room. Did everyone get an outline? Okay, great. Jessica, will you hand me the outline? And welcome, it's good to see you. And please, guys, do not feel like you can't get up and go to the restroom, go get a drink. We're all grown-ups here, and have a donut anytime you want. I'm not going to judge you or keep count. And I want to make sure that everyone knows why we're here today. NLP can be used for lots of different things, but primarily the main focus of today is personal growth. So I want everybody to think most about how you can develop better, change your own habits, change your own behaviors, change your own beliefs to a way that optimizes your life and makes your future and every day from here on out better and better, okay? That's the whole agenda for today. So, what I'd like to get started with is kind of talking about what NLP is, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and why I use it. First of all, does anyone here have an idea of what NLP is? Yes, would you like to go ahead and talk about what is NLP?
Well, I mean, all I know is from what I think Tony Robbins
Correct.
uses it.
Mm-hmm. And that is the primary reason that most people know about it. Does everyone here know who Tony Robbins is? Mm-hmm. Okay, raise your hand if you do not know who Tony Robbins is. Okay, we'll see there. So we got a room of about, good enough people, and everyone here knows who that is. Now, he definitely spent most of his early career talking about NLP, and then he kind of transitioned out of it and doesn't really use the terminology anymore, although I see him using the techniques all the time. He doesn't really teach on what he's doing, he just does it. And if you want to know what he's doing and why he's doing it, you're probably going to have to go back to the early stages of his career when he was educating people on why it works. And what he uses this for is for changing a behavior, a belief, or a habit right now, in real time. We want it done now and never to be a problem area again, okay? So that's why we utilize this. It's in order to model, everybody say that word, model. Model a behavior that you desire. NLP is about understanding that humans model behaviors based on mirror neurons. That's the neurons in the brain that activate when we see another primate do an action, or when we imagine it, or when we do it ourselves. There are things in the brain called mirror neurons. They activate and they create chemical releases, physiology changes, and everything about you can shift whenever you start to imagine another primate doing something, or imagine yourself doing it, or seeing it. Okay? So that is the basis of the science of why this works. The first thing I'm going to teach you guys about is mapping across. Now, Jessica has an actual experience with this, where we took food that she liked, which were the pretzels from QT, and we mapped them across with Brussels sprouts, which she does not like, okay? So after we did this technique, which took maybe 2 to 5 minutes, and it wasn't long at all, she no longer had a good feeling or a desire for a QT pretzel. She now thought about them the same way she thought about Brussels sprouts, okay? And that is the first thing that I'm going to show you guys how to do. It doesn't have to be with food. This can be with a behavior. This can be with anything that maybe it's a car that you no longer want because it's just something that is an unnecessary need. Maybe this is a habit that you want to change that you no longer want to do, whether that's binge eating or smoking or drinking. But does anyone right now want to try this out and have a habit, a behavior, a belief that they would no longer like to have? It's causing them problems, and it would just be easier if they just didn't have this in their life.
I'll do that.
Great, come on, have a seat. All right, everybody get better here. Okay, have a seat right here. We're both going to sit down together. And one of the first things that you always want to check whenever you start to work with anybody is to get consent. Everybody write that down, consent. Okay? So first and foremost, is it okay to change today and to never go back?
Yes.
Okay, are you sure that you want that?
Yes.
Great, perfect. So now what we've gotten is 2 yeses, and those are both in the affirmative. Those are both consensual that she does want to change this behavior or this belief or this habit, okay? Now whenever you think about the habit, the behavior, the belief, whatever this thing is that needs to change, it's less than perfect, what is it exactly?
My doubts, like.
Your doubts.
Yeah.
Okay, now when you say your doubts, or is it pertaining to a certain accomplishment, achievement, what is it specifically that you doubt?
Not succeeding at what I'm going for.
Which is what?
Just success. in what I
Okay.
do.
And what does it look like, that success that you're doubting that you can achieve?
Building my business in a way that I feel will help a lot of people.
Great, awesome. And so you have some doubts about that,
Yes,
and you're not sure that you can do that.
yes.
Now, whenever you think about that future that you want to have, is there a picture that you get, or an image, or a movie, or anything of what that's going to look like?
Like when I get there, or,
Yeah, when you get there. The doubt that you have about the future.
like, I don't really have a picture.
No pictures, no images, you don't know what that's going to look like? Do you know what it's going to feel like when you arrive there? When you finally, do you know what it'll feel like?
I can see how it feels.
You can see how it feels, right? You can see how it feels. Now, whenever you see a picture of how it feels, how does that look?
Like jumping up and down.
Jumping up and down. Okay, great. Now, whenever you see jumping up and down, is that in color or black and white?
More black and white, I guess.
More black and white, kind of
Yeah.
vague. And are you in it, or are you seeing somebody else jump up and down, or what?
I think someone else.
Somebody else. So, are you looking through your eyes?
Yes.
Okay, great. And is that near or close to you? Does it feel like the image is far away from you, or does it feel like it's close?
About right there.
About right in here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then, let's think about something that you're confident about, something that you know that you can achieve. You do it every time. Every time you try to do it, you can accomplish it. Do you have it in your mind?
I'm hoping it's being a mom.
Right? That's a good one. How about tying your shoes?
Okay, yeah.
You ever failed at that recently?
No.
You're pretty good at it?
Yeah.
If I asked you to do it right now, could you do it?
I don't have shoes on, but yes.
Anybody should. You can tie a pair of shoes, right?
Yeah.
What if, with all these people watching even, that's a lot of pressure. You can still tie a shoe?
Mm-hmm.
No problem, no worries. Whenever you think about that, do you get any type of images or thoughts or anything with tying a shoe?
No.
Any feelings associated with it? Do you feel confident? What's that feel like?
Like, I can tie a shoe without
Right?
worry.
Yeah, so what does it feel like when you know you can do something?
That's good.
It feels good, right? And do you get any pictures associated with that feeling?
Tying a shoe.
So you can kind of see yourself tying a shoe now?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? Is it in black and white or color? Or
Color.
color, right? And is it near to you, far,
Near.
near? And are you doing it, or are you seeing somebody else do it?
I'm doing it.
You're doing it through your own eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it right about here, the same? Is it,
Yeah.
or not so much?
An arm's length.
At an arm's length. Okay, great. So what we're going to do now, you guys see the differences between the way she associated with the first thing and the second thing. What are the differences?
She saw someone else doing it.
Right. Somebody else. Was somebody else doing the action? What else?
Color, clear,
Color.
closer.
It was in color when she was confident that she could do it. It was closer to her when she was confident that she could do it. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think about that success that you want to achieve. If your business were to look exactly like you want it to. Okay? Now I want you to bring that right about in here and in color.
It's kind of harder, but yeah, okay.
It's okay. When you're able to do it, when you're able to take that image and that idea and you're able to put it there, I want you to lock it into place, almost like you would hear something like, just do that with your mind. I want you to take that image and I want you to just put it right there, lock it into place, that future success in color, real big and bright.
Okay.
How do you feel about your future success? Are you more confident that you can do it, or does it feel like you have doubts?
I have an image.
You have an image now, and you feel like that you're confident that you could actually achieve that, or do you feel like that maybe it's still fuzzy?
I see an image now, so it feels more confident.
More confident and more clear? Okay, great. So what we want to do now is we want to see, is there any way that you could imagine that future success of you also see yourself jumping up and down and excited about that?
Yeah.
And now is that, can you put that in color and write about in there? That future success?
Yeah.
And now that you've done that, how do you feel about it? Feel a little more confident?
Yeah.
A little more confident, right? So now what we're doing is we're repatterning. Okay? So rather than stick with the old associations, the old feelings, the old images, are there any sounds associated with any of this? No sounds? Whenever you think about tying the shoes, any sounds? No? Okay, so see, that's okay to move along quickly. If the person you're talking to doesn't have any sounds associated with the idea, the concept, the feeling, the behavior, if there's no sounds associated with it, move on. If there's no feelings associated with it, move on. Okay? You want to try to find whatever that person's creating. Now then, whenever you think about tying your shoes, still the same amount of confidence? Similar amount of confidence now with your future.
Yeah.
Feel pretty confident? Feel like something that you can do now?
Mm-hmm.
And is it okay to let go of those doubts?
Yes.
And is that what you want to do?
Yes.
So now that you think about your future and being able to succeed, how confident are you?
Confident.
Confident on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident you could possibly be, 1 being the least, where are you at now?
In my picture,
Mm-hmm.
a 10.
A 10. Okay, great. So that's what we want. We want to create a 10. We want to create a picture of a 10. We want to create a feeling of a 10. If you were able to achieve that picture, that 10, and when you do, how will that feel?
Awesome.
Awesome. And when you say awesome, is there any type of sensation you get in your body? Any type of feeling? A warmth, a heaviness, anything? Fuzziness?
Yeah, just like a.
Something right in here, like a ball or like a, what is it?
Not like chill bumps, but just feeling like not really.
Not necessarily chill bumps, but kind of like that.
Yeah.
That feeling like that where the hair kind of stands up on your body and it's like, I want that. Is that close?
Yeah.
Great. And can you turn that feeling up? Can you make it more intense?
Yeah. I think I can feel like the closer I'm making it real,
And is that what you want?
yes.
And are you confident now that you can achieve it?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, great. Now that's a map across. Thank you very much. Everybody get back in. That's a map across. Okay? And that's pretty simple because that's our emotional association. If you guys go back and watch this video, you can watch her demeanor and her physiology shift from when she was first talking about her doubts about what she could achieve to the last right there. It was a huge shift in her physiology. Everything about her demeanor, her shoulders went back, her eyes were lifting, she was more excited about talking about her future, and there were a lot less doubts in just the way she feels about her future. And that is one of the things that you want to be able to demonstrate in somebody quickly is to watch physiology, watch micro-expressions, and watch them change their visual association with something from one thing to another. Does anyone want to try this on a food or something like that, a substance that you want to get rid of? This is pretty easy for mapping across on foods. Go ahead, come on up.
I can get rid of some food.
Yeah, and definitely don't ever try to get rid of a food that you need or want. There are big rules that I have whenever asking, like, do you want to change? Are you ready to change? There are rules that I have that if you have a food that you like to eat only one time a month, women prefer chocolate sometimes, one time a month. There are certain things like that that I want to make sure that I check that you do want to get rid of this, okay? Because if it's not a real problem for you, don't just try to get rid of it just because you want to be involved in a demonstration. It probably won't stick, okay? Because you want to make sure.
Couple of questions. That
Yeah.
process you went through with Beth, or about to with Brent,
Mhm.
how frequently would you remind yourself or go through that process early on? Like, was it a one and done for Jessica with Brussels sprouts? There in the store, now she wants to throw up and smell Brussels sprouts when she looks at pretzels, or was it over a series of?
It was like, like when you first have it, like the smell was there and everything, so I had no craving. If I tried to eat one now, I probably could, but it would be like not the same. You know what I mean? Like it kind of ruined it for forever.
It does ruin it. It does ruin it. And that's the problem, is because everything that you feel about the foods that you like, the substances you like, the habits you like, they are attached to a story that you've told yourself about them. Okay? What we're doing is we're changing your story. And we're allowing you to participate in it. You're letting me know when you're attached to something, when you like it, how does that feel? When you don't like it, how does that feel? And then we're just changing the way that you process information concerning that thing. Okay? So then, would you like to actually get rid of a food that you crave today and never ever worry about picking it up again?
Well, I just like to eat less.
Okay, so here's the main thing that you have to be sure of that you know is that you can do this in moderation. You can do less. Because what we're trying to do is open up your choices. We're trying to make you not emotionally attached to having to do something, to being open to choices. Choosing to do it rather than having to do it. I have to eat a donut every single night after dinner. I have to. I have to. Well, what if you didn't have to? What if you chose to occasionally? So that's the other thing is that now what we can do is make it easier for you to choose to when you want to.
Yeah, that's.
And that way it wouldn't have any power over you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Because, do you mind telling me kind of what my
Oh,
habit is?
please, that's why we're here.
I tend to do fine during the day.
Mhm.
I can eat moderately and
Yeah.
it doesn't really bother me, but whenever I get home, I want to eat till I go to bed
Yep.
for some reason, and I'm not even hungry. Anything
Anything in particular that you go for that's like your go-to?
If it's available, it's pretty much.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So then, if we were trying to pinpoint exactly what it is that you want to get rid of, is it the behavior of just kind of snacking?
It is.
So it's not a particular food; it's that behavior.
No, it's not that I hate food or
Okay.
anything, or I want to get rid of food. I just don't want to eat it all night long.
Gotcha. Very good.
I
Okay.
just want to stop the habit of eating it.
Gotcha.
When I'm not actually hungry and.
Perfect.
It's not necessary.
Good. Good, perfect. So the first person that I worked with, I went ahead and did this just based upon my nature of how I do this. The second time we do this, I'm gonna go ahead and run through the checklist so you guys can follow along with me so that you can kind of see the first few times if you try this with another person, I do highly encourage you to use the checklist. And after you get very comfortable with this, you'll start to notice that you don't need it, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to ask you is about this habit or this behavior. When you're thinking about it now, that act of just kind of snacking, do you get a visual in your mind or a video or anything of you doing that thing or that habit? Do you see yourself doing it? Do you think about when you were talking about that thing that you do, what was going on in your head?
I don't really know. I just.
How'd you know that this was the thing that you don't want to do anymore?
Because I just realized that I do that.
Mm-hmm.
I just became aware of it.
And when you realized it, what thing pops in your head that makes you realize it?
Before I didn't really realize it. I just did it out of habit. I know. Now I look at it and I go, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm. And
I'm not.
when you look at it, what is it that you're doing?
I'm eating a bag of chips
And where do you go to do that?
in the living room,
In the living room? Where do you get it out of?
kitchen.
Okay, and whenever you go to open it up, whenever you're thinking about that now, is that in black and white or is that in color when you're thinking about doing that?
It's color.
It's in color, okay. And is it near or far from you as you're thinking about it now, that memory of doing that thing?
The memory
Mhm.
is here. It's far.
Far away from you, okay. And is it bright or dim? Real vivid and high color or
Right.
bright, okay. And the location of it, as you think about it now, is it happening somewhere in your mind or are you kind of seeing it play out on the screen or
Now I'm watching
you're watching it? Okay, are you in it or are you seeing it through your eyes?
both.
Okay, and what's the size of it, the picture? Is it a large picture, like panoramic, or is it small, like a little frame?
It's like watching TV.
It's like watching TV, so it's kind of framed, okay? And then, would you say that it's focused or kind of blurry?
It's focused.
It's focused, very clear, okay? And is it a movie or is it still? Are you seeing yourself do the whole act and
It's mostly still.
mostly still? Okay, great. Are there any sounds associated with it? You hear the bag opening and crinkling as you grab it or anything like that? Any feelings associated with it? Do you feel good when you go to reach for the chips? You do feel good? What's that good feeling feel like? The location of it, is it in your body? Is it like you feel it, happiness in your chest?
It's mostly in my mind.
It's mostly in your mind.
Satisfy my craving.
Okay, good. Have you ever smoked a cigarette?
I have not.
Okay, have you ever drank an alcoholic drink?
I have.
And is the buzz that you kind of get when you first taste alcohol, is that similar to the feeling that you get whenever you think about getting the chips, or is it totally different feeling?
It's totally different.
totally different feeling. Okay, and what's the size of the feeling? Is it a big feeling in your head or kind of small?
Probably medium.
Medium size. Okay, great. And does it have a shape to it at all? That feeling?
No.
No? Okay. And is it intense or is it just kind of dull?
Probably in the middle.
In the middle. Okay, great. And so do you guys see that kinesthetically, does he have a lot of associations with this? And then visuals, is this very visually clear? Initially it wasn't, right? And then whenever we started talking about the memory and really getting to relive it, then it was pretty clear, right? Okay, now, do you have a behavior, a habit, or anything that you admire about yourself?
That I admire. Well, I know I do.
Okay, great. Now, let me ask you a question. Is there an ideal image of yourself that you have in your head, like an ideal, the person who's already solved this problem?
No.
No. Okay, well, we need to create that real quick. So, every single one of you should have an image in your mind, even if it's really small. A clear picture of you, the ideal you that is a problem solver. The ideal you that's a champion, that's a hero, that's in victory constantly. The person who always solves your problems, okay? Now what I want you to do is to do your best now to think about what it would look like if you were that person.
Yeah, I like this guy already.
You like him already? Now whenever you think about this guy, what color shirt is he wearing?
I'm wearing red right now.
Red right now, right. Good. Now we're starting to associate ourselves with this person.
Yeah.
It's good, right? Now, when you think about this person, I want you to imagine this person smashing the image of the guy that you just had who was eating the chips. I want you to completely, like a slingshot, the image of this guy that's a superhero. The champion, he's going to smash that old image in your mind. And I want you to do that clearly. And if you can't have any sounds or feelings associated with it, I want you to feel it.
Okay. It's kind of like breaking the window.
Okay, and then so do you see it shatter, that image? Now when you think about now how that feels, how does it feel? How will your life be different if you're that new guy?
Well, I won't weigh as much.
That's right. And what else?
I don't need to eat just for the sake of eating.
Right. And what else?
And I feel really good about myself because I'm thin.
Yep. You feel really good about yourself now, right?
In my vision, I'm thin.
Right? Good. And that good feeling that you feel about yourself when you're thin, is it similar to the feeling that you used to get when you were eating the chips? Or is it better?
Well, since you brought it up, it's doing really well now.
It's better now, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So then, now that you think about that old feeling that you used to have about eating the chips, how do you feel about that now?
I don't like it.
Do you feel like that it's something that you're going to want to do?
I hope not.
You hope not. Does it feel like right now that you would want to at all?
Not right now.
Not right now, it doesn't, right? Now let me ask you something. Do you think that that might change?
Well, not till you brought it up.
Not till I brought it up. Now what I've done is I've introduced a new concept. This is the concept that your brain will introduce itself if you don't have a backup. So what you want to do is do it again. Okay? Now I want you to imagine yourself, same movie, same picture of going into the pantry or the kitchen and grabbing the chips.
Okay.
And then you're going to smash it again. With that same ideal image of you as a superhero, as a champion, already solved this problem, and I want you to, just like a window shattering, that picture of you is going to completely be demolished.
You know, this is really awesome. I'm just thinking, I'm wasting all these chips.
Are they shattering and smashing everywhere? They're all over the place. Awesome, that's great. Did anybody else get a similar image that was like that? When he said a window shattering, I actually started seeing and imagining like this movie of him doing this was like a window and just shattering and just blowing apart. Did anybody else get that? Well, you want to make sure that in your mind there's not a piece of that movie left. It has to be completely demolished by that image of you.
So get a broom and sweep it up.
So you got to make sure it's all gone entirely. This is a very intentional visualization technique This one's called the SWISH pattern. Okay? We went ahead and moved on to the next one. And the reason it's different is because I gave him the ideal image of him. The him that solved the problem entirely. That's the difference. See, mapping across is taking a like and a dislike. The behavior, mapping it across to a different behavior. That's not always good. Do you want to know why? Can you always exercise when you want a cigarette?
No.
No. So if you map across a like and a dislike and you give somebody a new behavior to do instead, if they can't access that behavior, then they'll still go back to the trigger. By giving someone the ideal image of themselves, can you always be the ideal image of yourself? Yes, you can. It gives you a different association. Okay? Great job, man. I really appreciate it. Everybody give him a hand.
Understand next time you see me.
Okay, so the last technique that we're going to talk about is reframing. Does anybody want to do a quick demonstration of reframing? And we are going to go back over these and discuss them real quickly. Reframing is great because you can pretty much take any circumstance or situation in your life, doesn't matter what has happened, whether you feel good about it, bad about it, or indifferent about it, and we can reframe it in order to give you different emotional associations. So if you have a time when you graduated from high school, or you won a race, or you got dumped by a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it doesn't matter what it is. However you want to reframe it, I can show you a fast and simple way to reframe any circumstance or situation to give you better mental clarity, to give you more control over your emotions, and to help you see better future situations and scenarios. All right, let's all do it together. Everyone in here think about a past situation that didn't go so well. One that ended up very negative. You didn't get the result that you wanted, and it feels like that you were out of control about that. Not your fault. not necessarily anything you could have done about it that you can think of right now. Does everyone have one, and is there anyone that still needs a few seconds? Or maybe a different cue to help you out? And don't feel badly about this. None of our brains work the same way. So if you need a better cue or a better way of being able to bring this up, we'll take a few seconds and I can help you with that. Okay, great. So I want you to think about that situation from the perspective of a superhero. Now, this is called dissociation. Now, you guys remember a lot of times when I was asking questions, I would ask you, are you in the picture or are you out of it? That's association. So when you think about now that situation, I want you to dissociate. You're going to see this from a superhero's perspective, watching you. You're going to watch you in this scenario, play it out as if you were Wonder Woman or Superman watching the same scenario. Did anybody's emotions change about the way they felt about that situation? Let's go to the next one. Let's think about it from the perspective of an absolute loser, somebody that never wins, never, ever, ever wins, always loses. Think about that situation. It doesn't matter if you can think of a person in your life, if you can think of a character. I always think, has anybody ever in here seen Meet the Fockers? Mm-hmm. The main character of that poor guy. I mean, he just can't win, right? I think about sometimes from that perspective. From that person watching my life, does it look the same? When you think about that now, are there any differences? Do you feel differently about it? And the last one, Albert Einstein, super genius, whatever. You want to look at this from someone who's objective, rational, does not have an emotional attachment to this, no matter what, just sees it from what it is. This situation happened like this. This is what it is. Think about the situation from that perspective. Super genius, not emotionally attached to this, doesn't have a dog in this fight, just watching. Does that change your emotional attachment to the situation? Now, when I'm talking to someone and they're asking me for advice on what they should do in a situation, this is the first thing that I do. I always go, let's imagine neither one of us are talking and Albert Einstein is getting fed this scenario and being asked what he would do. What that does is take that person's emotional attachment to what will happen to me out of it. And allows you to look at it from a position of somebody who has no attachment to this. They won't be affected either way. We make all of our decisions based upon how it will affect us. And so as we reframe, we're trying to find ways to not look at it from our perspective so that we can get a real objective, rational look at the situation. And in order for us to do that, we have to intentionally create a character in our mind and look at the situation from that character's perspective. This is called dissociation. It is an exercise in reframing, and it is about the most powerful tool that I can give a person to take and to utilize for yourself. Reframe, okay? Now the SWISH pattern and mapping across normally takes someone else having to help you out because you don't really know the questions to ask yourself about, are you visually connected to this? Is this a sound connection, or are you feeling an attachment to this? It really takes a skilled practitioner to ask you these questions, which everyone in here is much more skilled as a practitioner than you were 30 minutes ago, because you saw somebody ask these questions. You witnessed what it looks like whenever somebody's having to access memories and question themselves on, why do I feel this way? How do I think about this thought? And so you're now beginning to see how humans store information and how they think about things. Does anybody want to right now try this with anything else? A SWISH, a map across, a reframe. Is there any area of your life, whether that's overeating, whether that's substance abuse, anything that you'd like to quit doing? Ice cream in the evenings, piece of pie, anything like that. We can get rid of those things very easily if you're done with them. If you want to get rid of them. If not, that's fine. We can just sit here and talk about what different areas this can work on. But if anybody wants to go ahead and get something taken care of and eliminated today, this is what we're doing. This is all about personal growth. Now, did everybody participate along with the last situation where we were generating the ideal version of yourself? Did you get to do that? Because we're going to go ahead and do that right now.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you're reframing and you're realizing now, I mean, you go back to the event and you're thinking
Yes.
about it, like when I'm doing that, I'm thinking regret. Like, why didn't I act like the superhero? Why did I act like the loser instead of this, you know what I mean? How do you...
Okay, so if go ahead and everybody look at the reframing outline, because this is a very important point that I don't want to leave out. Reframing applies to past experiences, present circumstances, and future situations and scenarios. So when we're thinking about our past, a situation that didn't go well, and we're starting to regret it, right? Number one, think about that perspective from a superhero, and from a superhero's perspective, analyzing your behavior. Now, you may find that you find your behavior to be less than what a superhero would have done. If that's the case, you'll probably have a little bit of regret. So you want to move on to the next one. What about an abject loser? Somebody that's not a superhero. Somebody that doesn't do well in their life. Somebody that normally fails. How would they look at this? See if you still have as much regret. And then if still so, then move on to the next one. The genius. Look at it from that scenario. See if that person still feels regret. Now, after seeing it from all three different scenarios or perspectives that should be independent and separate from your own, right? It should be different from the way that you saw it, an original. You should have formulated a different perspective. Now, realize now, this is the most important part, realize now that your past did not happen exactly as you remember. It didn't happen identical to the way you remember. We've deleted, distorted, and removed details in order to create a nice little story that's easy for us to remember. So it didn't happen exactly as you remember, and it can be seen as entirely different through the eyes of another. Therefore, it makes no sense to worry. about the past. That's the reframe. Is that, yes ma'am?
Can you go into some more detail on how to reframe it from the perspective of a loser? Because
Yes.
if you're picking a negative situation, you might
Yes.
have that victim mentality.
Correct. So that's why we start with the superhero
Mhm.
mentality, is because you want to become a superhero first. That makes you feel powerful, strong, in command, in control, and a little more objective of the situation because you feel like you have more power. Now, a lot of times what happens when people put themselves in that situation, they feel regret. Because they go, man, if I had done this before and had this ability before, I would have handled my situation differently. I regret that now. So what I want to give them now is the power to see what it would have looked like from the perspective of somebody who never wins, who didn't have the capacity to do better. Wouldn't have done better, would have lost still. And what I'm trying to get you to do in that situation is to see that you are not a loser. It is impossible for you to put yourself into those shoes and feel that way and feel as connected to that situation. So even if you lost in the situation, what it helps you to see is that you are not a loser. It is entirely impossible for you to make that generalization about yourself, because you don't always win and you don't always lose. Therefore, for you to call yourself a loser or think of yourself as a loser is entirely nonsensical. So what reframing does is it shows you how silly you are to tell yourself one story or another. It gives you the ability to tell yourself different stories about your situation and empower you to have different ideas and therefore choose the one that makes you the strongest. Does it?
Yeah.
Great. So then what we want to do then with the last one, the genius, is to be as objective and as rational as possible. No emotions, take it all out of it. I'm just an objective third party. Has everyone read the story of King Solomon whenever the two ladies came to him and they had one baby and both of them claimed that it was their baby? What did he do? Does anybody remember? He ordered to have the baby
Cut in half.
cut in half. Why?
Because then the real mother would step up.
The real mother stepped up and said, what?
Don't
do
do it.
Don't do it, let her have the baby. I don't want the baby. Now, do you think that that was a kind, sympathetic way for the king to act? Was it super understanding? It was genius! Wasn't empathetic. You have to be able to look at circumstances and situations from multiple perspectives in order for you to make a decision that will make you feel best about it. And this is a clear, easy method to give you a way to do that. Okay? So if you're ever emotionally distraught about a situation or circumstance, this is a fast, easy way to give yourself perspective and to not be as emotionally attached to the outcome. In present situations, think about a current situation that is causing you mental stress. Whether that is a relationship with a spouse, a child, a client, whether that's your financial situation. Think about a current situation that's causing you mental stress. Think about that perspective from a superhero. Imagine what it would look like to Superman. Or if you have another superhero in your mind, that's somebody that you always think of as a hero, what would it look like to them? Now from the mentality and the perspective of somebody who never wins in life and is a constant loser. If they were to look at that situation, how would they feel about it? And then finally, a genius. Somebody that sees all possible answers, sees it clearly, can see that your solutions, can see your problems, can see all the areas that you're missing. And when they look at this situation, this typically brings clarity to situations that are currently causing us real stress and helps us analyze clearly and confidently. Future situations, the next one. Think about losing something in the future that you value. Now, this was a Stoic reframe that I learned while reading the book Happy by Darren Brown, and he talked about some people used to talk about the thought of losing their child unexpectedly, or their spouse, a loved one, unexpectedly, and playing that out in your mind, and actually thinking about what it would do to you to lose that person. But to start off thinking about it from the perspective of a superhero. What that superhero would feel like if they lost Lois Lane. And then a loser, and then a genius. And to play that scenario out fully in all three circumstances. And then you have to finish, because you're gonna feel awful when you do this. You have to finish. Make yourself go all the way through. The last thing you're going to do, oops, I cut my page off. Realize that no matter how the future plays out, it will never result in the future you're imagining. Your future is coming. The future that you're afraid of, the one that you just created, will not happen the way you just created it. It won't. So let it go. Now that you've played it out in your head and you got yourself all worked out, up, and all stressed out, and all upset, realize that it will never go that way. Never. You're not a mind reader. You're not a psychic. It won't go that way. It will go a way, but it will not go that way. Therefore, it makes no sense to worry about the future in that way. Not going to happen. It's going to happen another way, a different way, a way that is unexpected. But now that you've played out these different scenarios in your head, you have more emotional stability, you have a more focus, more control, more clarity, and when something happens to you and is taken from you that you like, you will have already trained your brain to reframe. And it helps give you more control and more power over those emotional uncertainties, over those things that are stressing you out. Reframing is one of the most powerful methods and tools that an individual can apply to their own mentality to give them clarity and control. Now, these other techniques are pretty powerful when you're working with others. The SWISH pattern and mapping across, and they're demonstrative. I can show you how to do it. I can make you do the visuals in your mind. With reframing, it really does all happen within your own head. And you really do need to give yourself time to play those situations out fully. Now, you remember earlier whenever I was asking you about the chips and we were talking about, I asked you, now when you think about that, do you get a picture or a movie in your head and you're like, no, nothing. You have to get a picture or a movie in your head. You have to play these scenarios out. You have to create it and you have to be intentional about it. Visualization applies to 80% of the neurons in our body. It changes our physiology. You have to be able to imagine, envision, and visualize the things that you want clearly, and it has to be attainable, it has to be reasonable, it all has to be well thought of, and you have to be able to see it clearly, guys, or else you won't be able to achieve those things. Now, does anybody have any questions about the checklist? You guys see me go through it the second time? Were you able to follow along? Was there anyone that while you were following along, something stood out to you that you were like, I want to know what this means? I don't really understand why you would ask this.
Well,
Yes.
I just kept thinking we should go back with his chips to the grocery store where he doesn't even buy them and bring them
Where you
home.
don't buy them, bring them home. Now, that is something that while I was a personal trainer, I used to tell people a lot was that, if you make yourself go out and get a craving rather than having it there in the home, it makes it a lot harder. That's a pretty good application. The reason we didn't go back further, and here's why I don't go back further, is because that's not where he started. I always go from where you're starting. Where is this a problem for you? Because
See, I don't buy the chips, so.
there you go. So his association with it was from the time that he has control.
Maybe we need to bring her up.
Sorry.
Under the bus.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, James, on the blue stuff, you skipped over it because that wasn't his primary.
The reason that the blue stuff gets skipped over quite a bit by me was because it's actually so if you are a visual thinker primarily, this other stuff is going to matter to you.
Okay.
But if you're not a primarily visual thinker, then when I start asking this stuff, it actually breaks rapport.
Right.
They don't.
Because they can't answer it.
They can't answer it. They can't generate an idea, a concept, and they start getting frustrated because people want to answer your questions. But if they're not that type of thinker, that's not. They can answer it, but it's not easy.
Right.
It's not the first thing that their brain is generating. But having said that, I do like to use these occasionally because when people are visual thinkers or auditory thinkers or kinesthetic thinkers, when you hit on these, you can see them light up big time. They're like, oh yeah, definitely. So I do that a lot.
So I have a question. Do you think there's people that are more visual learners, but maybe not how they think?
Yes.
I mean, because I know
Might not be the way they communicate.
Right. 'Cause I know I love music and stuff like that, but visually I read, I look at things, and I feel like I'm probably a very visual learner.
Yeah.
But I love music, but I don't listen to audiobooks.
Okay.
That type of thing.
Sure. Is there anyone else in here that prefers audiobooks over regular reading? You do? Anyone else?
Well, I didn't used to, but I do now because I'm so busy.
And
Audio.
you're able to do two things at once, right? Okay. So most humans are visual. I will just go ahead and tell you that if you start to think that all humans are visual, you're going to really screw up in life. But if you will keep it as a rule of thumb that most of us are visual, then it will really help you because you can pretty much start there with anyone, is with visuals. Asking them how things look to them, when you see this, how do you see it? All of those type of things. Can you map this out for me? Could you diagram this? All of those types of things are visual types of words. And if you're hitting on people's visuals, they're going to open up to you more. Is there anyone in here that doesn't know what their primary is and would like to know? I have a representational system that I can send you, but I could show you really quickly how to determine whether somebody's a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic thinker.
Sure.
Would you like to do this? Come on up, have a seat.
Oh, God, no.
Oh, no? Don't want it on camera. Okay, well, you want it on camera for you, that's okay. There we go. Okay, so I don't ever want anybody to feel uncomfortable or on the spot here. So
I want to know, but I don't want to say
I hear you. Totally no problem. Okay, this is pretty easy. If you could think of a decision that you made recently, and normally I like to do with a purchase just because it's normally something that most of us, at least here in the States, have some sort of recent memory attached to. Have you made a purchase recently that was kind of one that was difficult, you had to think about it, and you did make a decision, you finally decided, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm going to buy it?
Yes,
You did do that?
yes.
What was the first thing that made you decide to buy it?
The pain in my ankle.
The pain. Now, when you're thinking about the pain, what was it that stood out most about the pain?
The fact that I couldn't function.
When you say you
day
couldn't,
to day.
you couldn't function day to day, what was it that you noticed first of all when you tried to function and you couldn't?
Thing that I noticed. I think just the impact that it had on my day-to-day routines.
Right. The impact. When you say that it had an impact, what comes to your mind?
The inability to get out and hike and exercise and just do what I love to do.
And when you think about hiking and exercising, where do you go to do that?
Turkey Mountain, Red, just wherever the
Mhm.
hiking paths and around the neighborhood, just,
Okay, and whenever you do those things, how does it make you feel?
I think it makes me feel relaxed.
Relaxed?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you feel relaxed, are there any images or pictures that come to your head when you think about the word relaxed?
Pictures or images? Not really.
Not really.
No.
And any sounds? Do you have any sounds related to?
I think just that birds.
Birds.
And silence sometimes.
Yeah, silence has a sound. I don't know how many people in here really think about that, but silence is a sound.
I've heard the song.
Sound of silence. Great. And so when you're thinking about the impact that it had on your day-to-day life, were you getting pictures of that, of the thoughts of what you liked to do with your day and you weren't able to do them? Did you see?
I think when I'm out there, it gives me the opportunity to not think about what I have to do with the rest of the day.
Right.
Because I get up and I mean, it's like, that's where my brain goes.
Yes.
As to what my schedule is for the day, what I've got planned for the day, and it's mapping it all out. And just getting out there gives me the opportunity to just, again, kind of go to that silent place where that I'm not thinking about what I have to do next.
Sure. I'm going to ask you a few questions now just to make sure that I'm right. What color shirt were you wearing yesterday?
Black.
Black. And how do you know
Because that's pretty much what I wear.
what you wear every day? Okay, and what color is your living room?
Beiges, browns, earth tones.
And if you were to think about it with purple spots all over it,
It would just absolutely make me hot.
it would make you hot?
Hot and crazy, yeah.
Hot and
just,
crazy, okay.
Yeah.
And when you think about the purple spots, are they big or small?
Big.
Okay, so you are a visual thinker. I do wish that I had had you on camera so that you could see it. But when I asked you about so Robert saw it. When I asked you about the decision that you made to buy something and purchase something, why did you make it? You started talking about the pain. And when I asked you about the pain, your eyes started going up. And you started thinking about like, okay, I go to Turkey Mountain, the pain, it was the impact it was having on my day, and there was a lot of up with your eyes. Well, then I asked you, what color is your living room? Or what color shirt did you wear? And then whenever you answered, because you actually knew what color your shirt you wore, like right away, like me, I wore black. I know I wore black, I wore black. And so I know, I don't have to think when I answer that question. You didn't either.
Okay.
You didn't have to think. You didn't break eye contact. You looked right at me. And then when I said, what color is your living room? Beige. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Look. And then when I asked you about the purple spots, nope. Right away. You don't like the color purple.
No, I
You
didn't.
heard that. She didn't need to think about what her room would look like. She was mad right away. Okay? She didn't want to think about it. So then I had to ask her the size of the purple spots. Then she went back up. Okay? So I had to ask her the size because the color purple automatically. So what I have to do is get her to think. Imagine, recall, when I'm doing that, it's all visual. You're a very visual person.
Yes.
And so when people are trying to speak to you, they're going to mostly use visual words if they know what I know.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Visual words. What does it look like? You know, if I were to show you this, could you tell me what you see here? All of those things.
Okay.
These are all visual words, okay? The more that you can start to identify what somebody else's representational system is, visual, kinesthetic, auditory, the easier it is to speak to them, the easier it is to communicate with them, and the easier it is for you to both stay in rapport and not get frustrated or irritated with one another. Because communication, guys, is very complicated and it's a code. I love doing this demonstration every time I'm with people just so people can get to see what I'm talking about. I say the word duck. What popped into your head when I said the word duck?
Actually, goose.
You saw a goose.
Duck, duck, goose. the
Robert?
game.
You saw a duck?
Done.
My dog getting one this morning.
There you go. Jessica, would you see
I'm so in trouble.
ducking down? Jessica saw somebody ducking down like this. What'd you see, Mike?
Before we head out here, we had to take the duck away from a dog.
There you go. Okay, great. Okay, guys, so do you see how I said the same word? We had a visual image pop into the head of a goose, a duck, ducking, a dog getting a duck taken away from it. I've had a lady think of her ex-husband because he was a duck hunter.
Oh.
Really, there is no way that you can know what your words, what images, what feelings, what sounds that someone else is hearing, seeing, or feeling when you're speaking to them unless you're clearly communicating and trying to understand how they see the world. Okay? So this is very important on getting people to understand how body language, how kinesthetics, how auditory and visual words can help you get more associated with yourself, understand how you think, and how others around you think. Did everybody get a lot out of this today?
Oh, yeah.
We learned 3 different methods. We went through them quickly. We started with mapping across. We went into the swish pattern, and the final one that we spent the most time on was reframing. And the reason we did that is because reframing is the easiest for you to use on yourself. And today was about personal development and personal growth. Okay? Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day. Grab a donut, please.